Welcome to the Garden Angelus, where we talk about flowers, veggies, and all the best dirt. I'm Dee Nash from Guthrie, Oklahoma.
And I'm Carol Michael from Indianapolis, Indiana. We call ourselves Garden Angelus because we are evangelists for gardening. We love gardening, and we want others to love it too.
Yes, we do. We are also authors and invite you to check out our books, including my book, The 20-30-something Garden Guide, and No Fuss, Down and Dirty Gardening 101 for anyone who wants to grow stuff.
And my books, including Potted and Pruned, Homegrown and Handpicked, and Seeded and Sodded, my trilogy of gardening humor, and my new book, Creatures and Critters, Who's in My Garden. You can ask for any of our books at your favorite bookstore or find them online wherever books are sold.
Speaking of online, you can also find the Garden Angelus on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest, and we'd love for you to join our Facebook group, the Garden Angelus Garden Club.
And now on to this week's episode. Hello, Dee.
Hello, Carol.
How are you today?
I'm fine. I don't have the coronavirus as of yet. I figure we should mention it.
We should mention it that, yes, we are recording this on the week of, I guess, the first full week of most things being shut down.
Yes. I did go to the store yesterday, and most of the stores, even in Oklahoma, are closing at 6 p.m. now, which is fine. I don't understand why people are hoarding toilet paper, but I had to go to the store and buy some eggs and some butter and some milk because my family loves eggs. And we don't have chickens right now.
Well, maybe you should mail order some chickens.
They sell them at Tractor Supply right down the street, but I'm still thinking about that because I don't know if I need one more thing to take care of.
That's true.
I have bees, you know.
Yes. And we're going to do an episode.
Oh, I have a funny story about that, though. Really.
About your bees?
About the bees. It's short. Yeah. It's short. Okay, so Bill went to the store for me because I've started feeding my bees sugar syrup. We're mostly out of the low temperatures, so I can feed him sugar syrup now. So he runs to the store, and he can't find sugar anywhere. And this was the first time Bill had ever shopped before any kind of a crisis, you know, because Bill doesn't have to do that kind of stuff because he has D.
Right.
And so he was freaking out because he couldn't find sugar. So he ran over to Sam's, and at Sam's, they had sugar, but it was in these giant bags. So now I have two 50-pound bags of sugar. That's more sugar than I'll need for the next 2 years.
2 years? It's a lifetime worth of sugar for me. Goodness gracious.
Well, you don't feed bees. Bees eat a lot of sugar water. But still, that's a lot of sugar. So anybody who needs sugar, just give me a call.
There you go. Dee's cornered the market. She's got all the sugar. No, there's plenty of sugar out there, people. No panic about the sugar.
There's lots of sugar.
Hey, let's talk about gardening. Okay, I have a quote. Ready?
Go.
Oh, where do fairies hide their heads when snow lies on the hills, when frost has spoiled their mossy beds and crystallized their reels? By Thomas Haynes Bailey.
Okay, so what really is a reel?
I have no idea what a reel is, but we had a bit of snow last Saturday, and so the snow was on the...
That's why you picked it?
I picked it because of fairies.
Oh, because of our flower this week.
Yes. Our flower this week is Epimedium, which is also called fairy wings. And
I love the name fairy wings.
That's what I call them. They are also called bishop's hat because they look like the flowers look like the hat of a bishop. And there's another name that speaks to the herbal nature of this plant.
Horny goatweed.
I was going to say, would you like to say that or would you like to say that? Me to say that.
I said it. Horny goatweed. What a stupid name.
We are never, ever calling it that again, Dee.
No, we are not, because fairy wings really is what epimedium blossoms look like.
Yes.
And anybody who doesn't grow epimediums in both of our climates should grow them. I didn't grow them until our friend Leonie from Legend Gardens said, "Hey, Dee, for dry shade or moist shade, why don't you grow epimediums?" And I said, okay. And then I promptly went out and bought some. And that was about 3 years ago. And they are pretty. They are very pretty.
Right. And I've had my epimediums. I got mine, I think, in 2010. I've had them for about 10 years. So I've got 3 really nice patches of it. It's one of those perennials that it takes a little bit to get it to establish. But once it's established, it is a no-fuss flower, in my opinion.
Right. It's absolutely easy to grow. You said that yours die all the way back to the ground in winter, didn't you?
Yes.
The leaves? Okay. At my house, if we have a mild winter, they stay above ground. I still have leaves on some of them. They're looking kind of ratty, just like hellebore foliage. So I need to cut them back. But I've been kind of watching them because mine aren't blooming yet. They usually have either heart-shaped leaves, which I'm all about heart-shaped leaves, or shield-shaped leaves. And they're really delicate.
They are. And sometimes they have like a reddish hue to them, or they're like ringed with red, the leaves. And so the flowers we'll admit the flowers are tiny.
They're tiny. And they kind of hide beneath the foliage a little bit. But look, this time of year, other than daffodils, I'm looking for something to look at.
Right. And in my garden, when I say that the foliage starts to die back in the fall, and by this time in the spring, it's like any other perennial. It needs to be cut back. And so I've already cut mine back because I want to cut them back before the new growth comes up. And then it does make the flowers just a little bit more visible because there's not as much foliage to compete with.
Which is exactly how hellebores are too. If you cut back hellebore leaves, they do the same thing. If you leave them on, you can't hardly see the blooms. So let's talk a little bit about growing conditions. According to Mobot, Missouri Botanical Garden, they are easily grown in average dry to medium, well-drained soils in part shade to full shade. They prefer loose, organically rich loams with even moisture and part shade. They tolerate drought once they're established, and they're a rhizomatous perennial, which means they are rhizomes, and they spread faster than most other epimediums. I don't know what that even means. But cut back any remaining old foliage in late winter. Okay, so I do that. I cut back any foliage that's left. Some of it's gone completely. One of the challenges here is that the foliage is pretty delicate, and if it's mostly gone and it's kind of blown away, then sometimes I forget where they're planted. That's a problem. But I'm trying to establish them in a new part of the garden that's shady. And I will say this about here. They don't like clay. So people who have clay soil, you're going to really need to berm up your soil in the shade. Right.
The other thing I'll say about epimediums is in the garden centers, when you go to look at perennials, this is not going to be a standout plant unless it's one of those with really, really attractive foliage. And that's why sometimes it's really hard to find like more than one variety at a garden center. So.
Right. Locally, I've only seen him at Bustani Plant Farm. He has one variety that's pink and has pink blooms, and I can't remember the name of it right now because I didn't want to go out in the rain and look at my tag. But I've also ordered them from various places, and I think that's what you need to do.
Right. And here I have a place not far from me called Soul's Gardens, which primarily is hostas and daylilies, but they have really branched out into all kinds of perennials. And they have had some epimediums that look pretty nice, and I think I've gotten some there.
Yeah, I've ordered most of mine from Digging Dog Nursery because they're kind of known for them. And then you came up with another nursery that primarily sells. Well, it looks like that's all they sell.
Yeah, that's all they sell. And that nursery is, it's epimediums.com is what it is. And the
Garden Vision Epimediums.
Yes.
Isn't that the name of the actual nursery? Yeah.
That's the name of the actual nursery. And so if you are into collections, and we always talk about plant collections, Epimedium would be one that would be really fun to do. Garden Vision, they have the collections. You could get a lot.
Yeah, because they don't take up much room. I will say this, if you're going to grow them in Oklahoma, first of all, you need really, really good soil. They like compost a lot. And I use leaf mold on mine, which they really love because they grow in the forest, and foresty plants love leaf mold because that's what naturally would happen to them. So they love shredded leaves on top. The other thing I was going to say is pick ones, if you do it from a nursery, pick ones that say they are especially robust. Because if you choose some archaic epimedium out there that only an epimedium collector would know how to grow, it will promptly turn up its little roots and die on you here.
Right.
I think.
I have a story about epimediums turning up their roots and dying.
Oh, that's sad, but go ahead.
Well, last summer I went over to Ohio for a Garden Com meeting, and we went to, I think it's Groovy Plant Farm
Yes.
And they had epimediums in quart containers, and most of the time when I see them in the garden centers, they're in gallon containers, and they want like $25-$30 for that gallon. Well, they had quart containers, and I'm thinking they were like $5 each. So I bought like 6 of them, And I planted them under this tree in dry shade. And then I was not very good about watering. And I looked over.
You forgot to water them, didn't you?
I looked over one day and they were really kind of crispy. And so, but hope springs eternal. And I continued to water them even in their crispy state. And so I need to go over to that area. It's not along my path. I need to go over and see if any of them are actually going to come up this spring. They might.
Okay, so that's your job for this week, is to report back how they did. You can report back to the gardening club if they're even still alive. Like most things out in the garden, if you don't water them, they die. And I've been guilty of that many times. For one thing, sometimes in the middle of plant buying and planting frenzy, I forget where I plant things, and then I forget to water them. And then I come back later and I go, oh, darn. So I'm really buying fewer plants this year. I'm just saying. So indoors, if you overwater houseplants, they will die. And outdoors, if you forget to water, they will die. Plants.
Yeah. I don't know what my plant buying habit's going to be this spring. You know, I've already started with 9 flats of pansies and violas. We'll see.
Yeah, but those are just seasonal color.
Yeah.
I don't think that's bad.
We'll see. I'm really trying. I'm at that point where I really want to kind of see, after years of frenzied planting, what have I got out here, and kind of make sure every bed and border is well tended, and see where I've got some gaps, and then I'll be buying some stuff.
I ordered some more Rose Marvel salvia. I know these aren't epimediums, but you guys want to hear what we were growing this year, right? Because mine bloomed itself to death. I'm not sure what happened to it last summer. It had water, it looked good, and then all of a sudden, one day it was just crispy, like it had just bloomed itself to death. But I like it so much, and the bees like it so much, that I bought more of it. So we'll see how it does.
Okay.
And I bought some lavender. So far, that's what I've got.
Yeah, I haven't ventured out into any perennials yet, but it's early yet.
For you.
Yes.
It's not early here,
Nope.
But go ahead. All right. So if we haven't convinced you to try epimediums, I don't know why, because we like them.
Right. And if we haven't convinced you, go out to the Garden Angelist Garden Club on Facebook and tell us why. Where did we fail you, people?
So I have a quote for our vegetable section. You want to hear it?
I love this quote.
Every child should have mud pies, grasshoppers, water bugs, tadpoles, frogs, mud turtles, elderberries, wild strawberries, acorns, chestnuts, trees to climb, brooks to wade, water lilies, woodchucks, bats, bees, butterflies, various animals to pet, hay fields, pine cones, rocks to roll, sand snakes, huckleberries, and hornets. And any child who has been deprived of these has been deprived of the best part of education. Gosh, that's from Luther Burbank.
Isn't that wonderful?
That quote is beautiful, and I couldn't agree more. We've been talking about Megan and I, my daughter, who's actually texting me right now as we're trying to record, because she never can remember when we record, but that's okay. She's the one that just had the baby.
Right.
And already we're discussing about the sunflower house we're going to make for her.
Oh, yes.
And because I made Megan a sunflower house, and Brennan and Claire. And so that's the first thing Megan wanted to talk about, is about that sunflower house. So I suspect in a year or two we'll be doing that. And that's part of this whole thing. I would also say, he said water bugs, but I would also say roly-polies, sow bugs.
Right.
I loved them as a kid.
And
so
I would say we should give a shout out to Sharon Lovejoy and her book Sunflower Houses, where you got the idea for the sunflower house. And we'll put a link to her book, because if you have kids, and I just think kids need to be outside in general. And we spent a lot of time outside as kids. There was a creek in the neighborhood. We played around in that creek. We messed around with crawdads. The boys would pick up the crawdads with their pinchers, but us girls would just kind of scream and hold sticks out for them to pinch. But anyway, we digress. I picked that quote because Dee mentioned strawberries, and we want to talk about growing strawberries.
Yes, and especially one strawberry in particular, which all of mine came back this year in my raised beds, and I will be adding more of them if they're available locally, which they were last year. They were actually available at Home Depot. And that strawberry is called Buried Treasure red strawberry. And the reason it's called red strawberry is not because the strawberry's red, because the bloom is red.
Normally the bloom is white. Yes.
Yes. And it's a beautiful strawberry. It looks great. I uncovered a whole bunch of ants, red ants. They had stacked up. I was looking at the mulch and I was like, why is there so much mulch around this one strawberry? I just took my gloved hand and just swooped it aside and it became red ant panic.
Way to go, Dee.
Yeah, tough red ants. You have to
So
go.
how do those taste? How did the buried treasure strawberries taste?
They taste just like strawberries. They taste delicious.
Oh,
strawberries
good.
that you grow yourself are wonderful.
They are. And there's 2 types of strawberries. There's actually 3 types. There's everbearing, day neutral, and June bearing.
So the buried treasure one is a everbearing variety, which in Oklahoma doesn't mean it bears forever. It just means it bears over a longer period.
Right. You will tend to get a little bit of fruit all through the season.
Right.
Versus the June bearing, they will produce a great big crop in June over a couple of weeks, and then they're done.
Yes. And so back in the day when everybody made strawberry preserves, and some people still do, I have many times, June bearing is what you want to grow because you want that giant crop. Or in my case, I just go to the strawberry blackberry farm and pick my June bearing strawberries because I want everbearing here.
Right. I would agree with that. Leave the June bearing to the strawberry farmers. And we've got some places around here you can go and pick your own strawberries. And my niece took her kids last year and they had so much problems with the rain and everything, and they would get picked out when they were open. And so it was kind of hit or miss if you could get there. But most years there's plenty of berries and you can go, and it's fun for the kids to pick them.
Yeah, because you get to eat berries as you pick. Yum.
Yes. And so berries, whether it's June bearing or everbearing, they're generally planted now as bare root crops. If you order them from the mail, you just get a bunch of roots with a crown on top.
Right. And there's a lot of talk about how to grow strawberries. None of the stuff in the books ever helped me, but I just do it how I want to now. And then talk a little bit about day neutral.
Well, day neutral just means that they're not affected by the amount of daylight, so they'll tend to produce berries all through the season.
So they're similar to everbearing in a way.
Yeah.
So everbearing strawberries, I just grow them in my potager. I grow them in a couple of rows. I grow stuff in between them, and then I mulch them. And you can mulch them with straw, hence the name strawberries. You can mulch them with a little bit of wood chips. Just don't mix the wood chips in with your soil. There's a lot of things you can mulch them with. Compost.
Right. And the other thing is they should be grown in rows because they tend to bear fruit best on the outside of the rows. So
on the sides.
If you have a big patch that's like 5 by 5, you won't find as many berries inside the patch. So plant them in rows and then let them. The first year, Dee, this is really hard to do. The first year
It's like with asparagus. Yeah.
You're not supposed to let the runners grow, so you cut those off, and you're supposed to not let the flowers bear fruit. You're supposed to let the plant just kind of plump up. Who does? I don't do that. I let it bear fruit.
Okay, so I will say on the buried treasure berries, they don't really put out runners. I haven't seen any runners on them at all. They just stay as a compact little plant that bears a whole lot of berries for the size. And I'll be honest, I picked the berries off and I ate them.
Yeah.
And they came back fine, and they look a little bigger the next year, and they are going to bear again. So I've now grown, because I tried it first as a trial plant. I've grown one of the trial plants. This will be its 3rd year. And then the rest of the plants, I think it'll be their 2nd year. I just eat them.
Right. The other thing about strawberries is they do tend to have some diseases that can cause problems. And I don't know the specific ones. And this was kind of a surprise to me, but you should rotate your strawberries to different parts of the garden to kind of avoid diseases. Or I think sometimes my sisters complain like her strawberries aren't bearing like they used to. And I think the patch is just kind of petered out. And so if she moved that patch to another part of the garden and planted either transplanted some if they didn't have disease or got some new plants, she would have a new flush growth of strawberries, a better crop. They just wear out after a while in the same spot.
Yeah, they probably do. Or they wear out the soil in the same spot, too.
That's what I mean. They wear out the soil.
Okay, because the soil gets tired. So be sure and compost them. You can add a little bit of fertilizer if you want to. You're trying to produce more flowers so that you get more berries. But I agree. You probably need to move them. You probably need to move most vegetable garden-y things a lot. But, do I always do that? No. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I don't. With tomatoes, I definitely do. Okay, so anything else you want to say about strawberries?
Just that they are delicious. And if you have kids, you definitely want to be growing strawberries. And like you said, if you want jams, get the June bearing. If you just want to have some to eat, get everbearing. And enjoy.
And just go pick the June bearing. They take up a lot of room in your garden. Unless you're young and you want to do a homesteading thing and, have a giant patch. I did that. I'm over that. Okay, so on to our bookshelf.
Right. On the bookshelf today is Gardening Your Front Yard by Tara Nolan, a brand new book from Quarto Press.
Right. It's under their Cool Springs Press label. And we know Tara. Tara is a neat person and we really like her. I talk to her a lot on Instagram. Her first book was called Raised Bed Revolution. And if I'm remembering right, it was more about growing crops in your yard. This is a little different. This is about how to garden your entire front yard, whatever type of gardening you like to do. And I think it's really good for someone who is trying to have less grass in their front yard. And we could all reduce the grass in our front yards. We don't have to go into that and make this all political. But if you do want to reduce some of the grass in your front yard, this is a good way to do it. It has tons of projects. Quarto is well known for producing books that have projects. And Tara has a bunch of them in here. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I bet you she did every one of these projects. Because these look like they're her photographs. And there's building, and of course she's really good at building raised beds. She talked about that in her first book. It's just a good book. It's a good book all the way around. And if you're wanting to reduce the size of your front yard and either grow vegetables in it or plants or a flower meadow for birds and bees and butterflies, I say buy it. It's a good book.
And here's the other thing that's nice about it. So many gardening books, they have lots of pretty pictures, but they don't really tell you how to build that same garden. And so with this having the projects and she has some pictures of them in process, it really kind of helps you figure out how you're going to actually do it or have a handyman do it for you if you're not so handy with a hammer and a nail.
Also, one more thing I thought of as I was looking through it again. It's not just about your front yard. It's also about gardening in your driveway. Some of us only have sun in our driveway. And when we've been on garden tours, we've seen a lot of gardeners who use their driveway as a vegetable garden or not a perennial garden so much, or annual color, seed garden, zinnias. I think that she tries to go to each part of the front yard and tell you how you could do something there. And yeah, she and her family made all of these projects. So it's a pretty cool book.
Very nice. So we'll put a link to that in our show notes in case anybody is interested in getting that out of their library or purchasing it for themselves.
Right. And you can learn how to make a garden obelisk if you want to, a really pretty one for that matter. And also those big, heavy square pots that are on every Pinterest page. She shows you how to make those, and she shows you how to put swivels on the bottom so that you can move the pots around. It also gets them up off of the pavement or off of the soil, and then that way they don't rot out so fast. So really a neat book all the way around.
Very good. All right. So ready for one more quote?
I am ready.
Here it is. That's the thing about books. They let you travel without moving your feet. Jhumpa Lahiri in The Namesake.
Yes, and since none of us are supposed to be moving our feet right now and staying in our homes, this is a good time to pick up some good books and read. So, and if you can't make it to your library, I know a bunch of the libraries have a rental deal with Kindle, right?
Oh, yes. I have an app on my phone. It's called Libby, and it's a connected to my library, and I can search for the Kindle edition of books and check those out or place them on hold. It's really very, very nice, especially now because here in Indianapolis, I believe that all of our libraries have closed for the duration.
Yes, and the library in Edmond, Oklahoma was closed anyway for remodeling. And I don't know if we've talked about this online before, on the podcast, but I'm not a member of the Metropolitan Library System because I live out in the country, and the town I live closest to didn't opt in because it's dumb. So it is more expensive for me to be a member of the library. I have to go and join and pay a fee. So you can also join something called Kindle Unlimited if you want to get books from Amazon. As always, we encourage you to visit your local bookstore, though, if you can.
Right. And so guess what our dirt is this week, Dee?
I know what it is.
Oh, well, there's no guessing.
Tell everyone else.
Okay, my next book is out and published. It's called Creatures and Critters, Who's in My Garden? And it's some new essays that I wrote with humor in mind about all kinds of creatures and critters that I found in and out of my garden. And you have not even seen it.
I've not seen it, so I don't even know if it's an adult book or a children's book, because you've written both.
It is an adult book, but it is humorous, and there's stories in there from my childhood. So I suppose, there's some stories that you could read to kids.
I like that. Well, I'm all about the creatures in the garden, so I can't wait to see it. And it's coming out. Is it out right now, or is it coming out?
It is out right now. I haven't started promoting it heavily because since I self-publish it, there's some quirks that I've got to work out. It is on that site that starts with an A, and it can be ordered there, hardback, softback, and Kindle. It's also on Barnes & Noble. My preference is that you reach out to your local independent bookstore and ask them to order it for you. And the bookstores are shuttering up as well. My little bookstore closed because it's only 500 square feet, and she said it was hard to keep social distance in that tiny of a bookstore. So she's offering, she's always had that you could mail order from her, and she's also offering local delivery. So if you have a stack of books you want, she'll bring them to you. But anyway,
wow, that's so nice. I don't know if our local bookstore is closed yet or not. I'll probably know today because I've got to run out for a little bit. One thing I wanted to say is I really worry about all the small businesses right now because they depend upon foot traffic. And as we know, retail foot traffic isn't too good anyway. So if you can, I read a thing online that especially touched me, and it was to go buy gift certificates at these places, whether it's your favorite restaurant. Bill and I have a favorite restaurant in Edmond, Oklahoma called Sparrow Italian Eatery. I love Sparrow, and Sparrow was struggling a little bit anyway because it's after Christmas time. And so go buy a gift certificate from Sparrow and then use that gift certificate later when you come back to the restaurant, or go buy it from a restaurant in your local area. I think we've got to help our neighbors,
We do have to help our neighbors, and they're offering options that continue to support the need for social distancing, and we should support them in that.
Or get food to go, like your book idea, your bookseller's idea, where she's going to bring the books to your house and drop them off. That would work too.
Right.
And in the meantime, if the only way you can get Carol's book is on the Big A, go to the Big A.
Right. In a couple of weeks, actually today I should get my first personal shipment of the books. And so at some point I will actually list them on my website, and people could get an autographed copy if they want. But I'm going to wait on that a little bit. I want to get some things set up before I start doing that.
Yeah, because you started doing YouTube videos.
I have started doing YouTube videos. Shall we talk about that next week?
Yeah, let's talk about that next week, along with some other books and some other things we're thinking about.
All right. Well, that's it for this week. We want to thank you for listening to The Garden Angelist. If you like our podcast, please tell your friends about us.
And if you listen on Apple Podcasts, we'd love a 5-star review. That helps us get noticed by others.
Yes, and be sure and check out our show notes for links for more information about today's topics, plus links to our own websites.
It was lovely to chat with all of you over the Garden Gate today. Bye until next week.
Bye, everybody.